So I was pulling poison ivy this morning, and it made me consider sin for a little while. Well, I would call it sin now, but I think that's a spell. I think most of our sins are spells, and they're spells that we've been under for so long, and we need to break them, but they are breaking us because we're under their spell. We don't realize it, or we do realize it, and we don't know the path out. So I was pulling up poison ivy. I don't know if you've ever pulled up poison ivy, but if it's in the middle of a bunch of lush other greens, so like I had poison ivy in the middle of plantains and clover and all sorts of other things, lots of good vegetables there, to be honest. But there was poison ivy in the middle, and you could just see it popping out every once in a while. And if you know poison ivy, you know it's got a taproot that goes down at some point, but it also has a root that goes along the surface, and it spreads much like strawberries, but it'll be like an inch underneath the surface underneath the dirt, and it'll spread really far, and a lot farther than you'd expect. But you've got one spot right here, and you got a cluster of poison ivy coming up, and then maybe 6 feet later you've got another cluster of poison ivy coming up, and you don't realize those things are connected. So what you got to do is you've got to find it in the middle of all those lush vegetables that you want to eat, that are good for you, right? And you've got to, instead of just plucking at the surface, you could just pluck at the surface, and then the root would just continue to expand and expand and expand, and you would never know the difference. You would just keep plucking it, and you'd be wondering why I've got all this poison ivy, and eventually it would take over. And that's all you'd have there in the middle of all those lush vegetables. So what you got to do is you've got to find it in the middle of all those lush vegetables. So I think that's what we see, us crazy people out here, us bears. We see the poison ivy popping up, and at the surface, you got to take care of that at first, but you need to track it down to the root. And once you start pulling the root, it's like this long thread that goes all sorts of places you never would have expected to be considering that it was, even in your pathway that you walk on every day. You've just been trampling down at the poison ivy that would pop up and give you poison ivy on your feet. So you start pulling it out, and this vine just starts coming out of all these lush vegetables that you'd have loved to eat among all this poison ivy. And you just keep pulling it out, and it goes all sorts of places you wouldn't have considered. And then eventually you can't pull it anymore because there's the end, it goes down. So you have to pull it to there, and then just keep pulling at that until you get it out. And so the spells are like that because you know how it starts. You know what you know about the spell, right? So let's just go with pornography. You know, when you got older, I mean, you probably got tapped into it when you were a kid, like everybody my age. And then you know it's there. You know it's a problem. And you know it's wrong. You don't know why it's wrong, but you know it's wrong. But hormones, right? Who gets over that easily? And you keep pulling at it. You might be good for a while, but eventually you realize this is millions of terabytes of data for free. What's going on there? And then you realize, oh, there's sex trafficking. There's money going back and forth. You're not paying for it, but you're helping them. You're helping all those other things. So you just need to keep pulling the root. You need to keep searching and searching and searching and pulling that root until you get to the end, and then you can extinguish it. You can extinguish it, but you have to be strong, because it's the best time to pull that poison ivy is in the morning, because you don't want your pores open. Because if your pores are open, you're going to break out with poison ivy all over, anywhere you touched it, and then you're going to get it all over your whole body, and then you're going to go insane from scratching poison ivy or be unable. So you need to do it in the morning. And if any of you live out in the natural world like me, you know what's out in the morning, those little buggers, those mosquitoes, those gnats, those horseflies. And you can't exactly smack at them while you're pulling poison ivy because your hands are covered in poison ivy. So you've got to take a little bit of a beating. It's kind of painful. You have to let them chew on you while you're fighting it. And that's sort of like all the other people around you that want to resist you becoming better for some reason, because it's not good for them for you to become better. So it's just a thought I had while I was pulling poison ivy. And if you're having a tough time, just remember, eventually you'll get to the root, you'll get to the tap, you'll get to the end, and you can extinguish it. It'll be a little bit painful for a while, but you'll get there. Just be strong.